The story begins in the province of Beijing in Siam, where a man is lying in the middle of an altar. The people around him ask if he really wants to continue with the ritual, and Emperor Qiu Shu commands them to proceed immediately. This man is known as Eunuch Qiu Shu, the person behind all the power of the Empress of the Ming Empire, a secretive figure who monopolizes the territory and authority of the land. He is also known as the worst villain in history for manipulating the empire's politics for his own benefit, and he is, in fact, our protagonist. Through great effort, he managed to transform the insignificant third empress into the reigning empress. However, despite all his successes, there is something he cannot achieve. Looking at a book of combat positions in his room, he remarks how unbelievable it is. Since he is a eunuch, it is obvious that he cannot partake in this kind of combat. Suddenly, someone bursts into the room calling him an idiot and shouting for the old man. It is the third Empress Manhua, who demands to know why he wants to leave this world. She kneels and begs him to stop this mysterious ritual, asking if the union of yin and yang is really so important to him. She wants to know why he can't just be happy with her by his side. She says that if it's money or power he needs, she will give him everything he wants as long as he stops the ritual. But Qiu Shu responds that he has already made his decision. He asks for her forgiveness for his betrayal, but says he cannot serve her until the end. Naturally, the question arises: why is our protagonist so obsessed with the union of yin and yang? Most people wouldn't understand, but for him, it is crucial. This is because he is a reincarnated soul, and in his past life, he was also a virgin. Even now, he remains a virgin, having lived more than 50 years without experiencing anything. The infamous reincarnation truck struck him while he was crossing the street, and he ended up in this martial world for 50 years. He died at 28 and reincarnated as a 12-year-old boy. The problem was that as soon as he arrived, he was kidnapped by a maniac. This was no ordinary kidnapper. The lunatic castrated all the men to sell them as eunuchs on the black market. Despite all this, Qiu Shu did everything possible to restore his masculinity. He transformed the princess into an empress just to meet an extremely renowned doctor. He mastered martial arts to the point of rebirth and became the most powerful martial artist in the palace. But even when one of the men knelt before him and declared that creating something out of nothing was impossible, he understood his intentions. The man apologized, explaining that only if he were reborn once more could he recover what he had lost. This made Qiu Shu question the purpose of money, power, and martial prowess if he remained a eunuch. These events led him to decide to reincarnate into a new body. He wants to experience a life full of combat and action behind closed doors. Essentially, he's a closed combat prodigy, and if he can't enjoy life with the most extraordinary fighters, he won't be satisfied. He orders them to remove the empress, who leaves crying, questioning how he could do this and not wanting to see him die in such an insignificant way. She calls him father because he raised her from childhood. Naturally, having known her since she was so young, he only sees her as a child or a younger sister. The moment she starts crying, he almost changes his mind. However, the decision has already been made, and to him she is family who will have to cope with his loss. A man wearing a turban approaches and warns that the reincarnation technique is an extremely forbidden ritual. Out of every 100 people who attempt it, 99 die, and he asks if Qiu Shu really wants to risk it. Qiu Shu looks down and thinks that if he must live this way it's better to die. He then orders the ritual to proceed. In life he has conquered and enjoyed all that strength can bring. He has also spent all the wealth he could. All he wants now is to be reborn, and for that, he is willing to risk everything. As his entire body glows with a pink light, he sees a blurry old man calling to him. Slowly he opens his eyes and rises, wondering where he is. The old man simply says he's glad the boy seems fine. However, Qiu Shu immediately recognizes who this bastard is. This is the same cursed old man who castrated him 50 years ago in the imperial palace. Qiu Shu remembers that in the past he had tried to hunt this man down only to discover he had been killed by some bandits. However, it seems that instead of reincarnation, what happened was a regression in time. He thought he would gain a new body by reincarnating. But as soon as he looks down his pants to check, the old man, confused, asks if he's hurt. Qiu Shu grins psychotically at him and thanks the old man for saving him before apologizing. The old man helps him up and mentions he has some herbs at home that would help the boy recover. But Qiu Shu laughs, breaks the man's finger, and asks if he plans to kidnap him again to sell him as a eunuch. When the old man asks how he knows about this, Qiu Shu twists the man's arm. Despite just regressing in time, he still remembers the martial arts of his previous life, and for someone who stood at the top of the imperial palace, defeating an old man is effortless. He puts the old man in a chokehold, saying that in his previous life he was saddened to learn the old man had already been killed. But this time, it would be Qiu Shu who would end him. After squeezing the life out of him, the man's body drops to the ground. Shiosu spits on the corpse and reflects that it has been a long journey, but he finally reached this point. In his past life, even with all the power and wealth he amassed, he couldn't enjoy any of it. Now, however, he is a completely different person. Whether reincarnation or regression, from now on he will live for the pleasures of life, if you catch my drift. And so begins the story of the second eunuch who reclaimed his masculinity. 2 months pass after his revenge against the cursed old man. Shiosu walks across a bridge, freezing in the cold. At this moment, he is trying to reach the province of Gamsuk, suffering along the way. But he tells himself that this pain is nothing compared to the life of pleasure he dreams of living. Although he has never experienced it, he knows it's more than just physical contact. If it were only that, he could simply earn money and buy some private combat sessions. However, he refuses to settle for such low-quality experiences. What he wants is to share true love with wonderful women, a connection of emotions and mental intentions. He dreams of the kind of love that leaves both people completely satisfied. Drooling at the thought, he declares this is the perfect thing to pursue. Still, he knows that to achieve this level of intimacy, he will need food and money. This is why he has decided to start his path toward becoming a hero in the martial world. Thinking he would reincarnate into the future, he had buried many treasures in his grave. Unfortunately, this isn't the case, but he still has the advantage of knowing what will happen 50 years into the future. With his martial prowess, he is confident that becoming a respected hero won't be too difficult. First, however, he needs to correct his habit of laughing like an idiot from his eunuch days. And so he swears this is where the legendary story of the harem king Lee Chio-su begins. He signals toward a building and asks if anyone is inside. From within, someone hears the voice of a child and steps out, wondering how anyone could climb the mountain in such a blizzard. Chio-su takes a deep breath and shouts for all to hear that he has lost his family to bandits and needs help to grow stronger. He declares that he wants to become a disciple of the joint clan. This martial faction combines 3 philosophies, Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism, to combat the dark forces of Django. However, to outsiders, they are often seen as either a demonic sect or a group of bandits. The old man rushes toward Chio-su and scolds him for risking his life by climbing the mountain in winter. Chio-su simply replies that nothing else matters if he can join the joint clan. The old man stops and tells him to show his arms and hands. He touches the boy's wrists and notices that the natural energy in Chio-su's body is already expelling impurities. Somehow, the boy knows the technique required to ascend the mountain. The old man praises him, saying that if he managed to get there, it proves he has some talent. He asks if Chio-su knows the basics of martial arts or if his family taught him anything. Chio-su claims that yes, that's exactly the case. Of course, he's not about to reveal his 50 years of experience. The old man introduces himself as John Young, leader of the Gangdang sect, and explains that there are several processes to join. However, based on Chio-su's basic talent, he will approve him. Chio-su celebrates as everything is going according to plan. He came to this place precisely because he knows Gangdang is on the brink of collapse, so they won't refuse a new disciple. Chio-su starts walking around doing pelvic exercises to prepare for future action. As he explores, however, he notices that the place is in far worse condition than he remembers. There isn't a single intact building, which is shocking given that he knows this sect will rise to become one of the top 5 in the world within 50 years. Seeing the scale of destruction now makes him doubt that a little. John Young tells him he must meet someone, the master of the sect's disciples. Chio-su thinks that the more chaotic Gangdang is now, the better for him. This way, he can become the prominent swordsman who saves a fallen sect, creating a legendary tale. They stop in front of a temple, and John Young calls for someone named Ruya, announcing the arrival of a new disciple, Lee Chio-su. Chio-su shields himself from the harsh blizzard. Suddenly, someone rushes out of the building. Chio-su startled as the person welcomes him as the new disciple. Chio-su wonders why this person is so ridiculously handsome. It's not a master, as he assumed. It's a boy around his age. He recalls from the manuscripts that this person was supposed to be incredibly ugly, but in person, he's shockingly good-looking. If this continued, his future was at risk. Fuya asks if he's okay, and Chio-su responds that there's nothing wrong with him. He then extends his hand and tells Fuya to stop being so formal since they are brothers from now on. Chio-su is annoyed that this bastard is still so nice, secretly wishing the guy only had 3 centimeters at most. Fuya tells him to hurry up because there are many places he wants to show him. Before Chio-su can say anything, Fuya pulls him away, but strangely, Chio-su doesn't want to be touched by him. He pulls his hand back and tells Huin not to touch him like that. Chio-su still isn't sure if this is a man or a woman, and he's a bit confused, apologizes, saying it's their first time having a disciple and they got a bit too excited. Xiaosu also apologizes, admitting he overreacted while thinking that he can't afford to lose the opportunity to stay in this sect for now. Meanwhile, Huya is just observing him. The snowstorm continues to fall, and the old man reflects that winter in this place is finally ending. He hopes Xiaosu gets along with Huya. 10 years ago, he accepted this child, who was an orphan at the time. After discovering how talented Huya was, he nurtured them up to this day. Now it's clear if Huya is actually a boy, or perhaps not. It turns out Shoya is a woman disguised as a man in the martial world. All the old man hopes is that her disguise isn't revealed to Xiaosu. Later that night, lying in bed, Xiaosu reflects that tomorrow marks the start of his phenomenal journey in this sect. However, up until now he has been mistreated the entire time, all thanks to that bastard Jin Hui. Earlier in the day, Jin Hui introduced herself apologizing for the sect's dilapidated state, but expressing a desire to show him the significance of the place. Even after the massacre 50 years ago, the palace of Ryanshan, where the master still resided, proved that the joint sect wasn't dead. She wanted to share its history with him. Xiaosu told her he understood, but asked her not to get too close because he's a bit shy. She agreed while he wondered why his new friend seemed so downcast. He approached her and said mistakes happen, so there's no need to feel disheartened. He even encouraged her to tell him the story of the sect if she wanted to. Jin Hui smiled brightly and Xiaosu felt he had done the right thing. It was easy for him to calm down a kid like this by simply saying what they wanted to hear. What he couldn't understand was why this boy kept clinging to him. Back in his room, Xiaosu writes on the wall, venting that he doesn't want to keep getting hugged by that boy. He's endured 50 years of celibacy and can't bear to see men anymore, especially one who's considered a genius among geniuses, the type who could rebuild an entire sect without breaking a sweat. In his past life, rumors said this person rejected every woman who approached him because he preferred to focus on martial power. Now, however, Xiaosu is certain Jin Hui is gay. What he doesn't realize is that Jin Hui is actually a woman. He recalls seeing Jin Hui in the castle in his past life, thinking he was enjoying himself in some peculiar way. Little did he know, Jin Hui was struggling with her disguise. Determined Xiaosu swears that in this life, he will ensure he gets to use what he's always wanted. Strangely, however, the weapon he always dreamed of wielding feels a little down today. He decides it's time to do some exercises to stay in shape. Meanwhile, Jin Hui, in her own room, is deep in thought. She wonders why she behaved so rudely toward the new disciple today. She couldn't control her excitement about welcoming someone new to her family. She recalls the moment Xiaosu told her he would gladly listen to the sex story. The memory heals her, as she realizes he cared about her feelings even if he seemed indifferent. She's eager to get closer to him and wonders if this is what it feels like to have a younger brother. At the very least, she hopes to get close enough to share a hug without it being awkward. The next morning, Xiaosu finishes washing a pot. He places it down and notices how decrepit the kitchen is. It looks like it could collapse at any moment. Even though it feels strange to spend his time doing this, he knows he needs to build his reputation here. Making a good impression on the master and the senior disciple is the best way to do that. Of course, while cleaning and gathering vegetables, he doesn't miss the chance to practice his unique exercises. Suddenly, Jin Hui appears and asks what he's doing in the kitchen. Caught off guard, he nervously explains that he prepared breakfast on his own. She praises him, impressed by his efficiency and smiles, while Xiaosu wonders why this bastard is so annoyingly beautiful. He responds that losing his family forced him to mature quickly. Jin Hui, visibly moved, reveals that she's also an orphan and admires his maturity. Xiaosu finds it strange that this person keeps apologizing and saying they understand him. Jin Hui offers to help him prepare the vegetables. Xiaosu remembers that in the future, this person will have someone by their side who will be renowned as the most beautiful and powerful in the world. Although that's far off, he decides it's best to maintain a good relationship with Jin Hui. He thanks her for her help and heads off to wash some vegetables, all the while thinking that he must keep his distance. He is determined to become an extremely powerful martial artist and conquer all the women who will be dazzled by his achievements. Suddenly, the shelf holding the pot collapses. Jin Hui turns to Xiaosu and warns him to be careful, as the debris is falling toward his head. He instinctively shields his face, but when he looks up, Jin Hui is standing too close, asking if he's okay. Xiaosu, flustered, replies that he's fine while wondering what kind of situation he has gotten himself into. Jin Hui casually remarks that he's lighter than he looks, leaving Xiaosu blushing as he catches a faint scent of wildflowers. Trying to shake off the moment, he snaps back to reality and, feeling a hand on his back and wrists, yells out, asking where his senior brother thinks he's touching. Jin Hui hastily explains that it wasn't intentional and pleads with him not to misunderstand. Xiao, embarrassed, tells Jin Hui to stop blushing because it's making the situation even weirder. Jin Hui apologizes again, says she'll leave and tells him to rest, assuming he must be shaken. As she walks away, Xiao sees this, thinking this cursed senior might just be trying to kill him indirectly. After all, if Master John Young saw this scene, he'd likely grab him by the neck and toss him out. He firmly tells Jin Hui not to help with chores anymore, declaring that as the junior, he will handle it himself. Jin Hui, visibly uncomfortable, reluctantly agrees but seems a bit disheartened. A moment later, she picks up a small pot and asks if it's okay for her to give just a little help. Xiao sighs and gives in for now, saying it's fine. 2 months pass and Master John Young gathers the disciples to ask what they think true martial strength is. Some believe strength comes from external sources requiring the consumption of various elixirs. Others argue that it's internal, achieved through constant body training. John Young states that true strength lies in the balance of both external and internal energies. Only a martial artist who connects with both the world and their body can reach their full potential. Jin Hui, focused on training, acknowledges the lesson and walks off, telling Xiao to train hard as well. Xiao smiles mischievously, thinking that even if no one ordered him to, he'd still give it his all. After all, a superior body equals superior vitality for the ultimate combat. As someone who plans to enjoy countless battles, achieving maximum potential is a must. To him, this suffering is nothing but sweet preparation. Sweet drips to the ground, but he feels at peace, knowing his efforts over the past 2 months are finally paying off. It feels like the euphoria gym enthusiasts experience when lifting heavier weights. In his past life, Xiao hated his body. No matter how much he trained, he always maintained a somewhat cute appearance. This was because he had mastered a technique specifically designed for Eunuch. Before discovering that this technique would permanently halt his body's development, he had even destroyed nations searching for elixirs. The more he reflects on this past, the angrier he becomes. In this life, he vows to ensure everything will be different. He will have a masculine body. Suddenly, Jin Hui approaches. Xiao asks why she's there, and she replies that she's finished for training and came to fetch him. Apparently, time flew by, and Xiao didn't even realize training was over. Frustrated that the days seem too short, he reluctantly follows her while she observes him silently. That night, high on the mountain, Xiao realizes he's missing something essential for achieving his perfect body. This leads him to train cardiovascular endurance, which he deems crucial for navigating the Garden of Pleasures. However, the sect leader doesn't allow excessive training, fearing it could harm his young body. But Xiao refuses to give up his nightly runs, believing they are key to becoming the king of vitality. Unbeknownst to him, Jin Hui is watching from afar. When he notices her, he stumbles on a rock and goes tumbling down. Angry and embarrassed, he demands to know why she's there. Jin Hui asks why he snuck away from the pavilion to train alone, reminding him that overexertion is dangerous. Xiao fumes, annoyed that he failed to sense her energy due to his current weakness. He worries she might report this to the master, jeopardizing his secret training. At the same time, he can't abandon his runs, they're essential to his goal. In an emotional performance, he apologizes to Jin Hui, saying he needs the training because he's weak, untalented, and forgets everything he learns. Tearing up, he claims he hates falling behind, and that if he doesn't push himself, he'll never be able to stand alongside his friend. Jin Hui, visibly shaken, listens as Xiao continues his act, crying and pleading not to be expelled. Moved, Jin Hui hugs him tightly, apologizing for not realizing how much he was suffering. But this was the last thing Xiao wanted. As he tries to wriggle free, Jin Hui holds him firmly, telling him not to cry. Xiao is mortified, thinking about how his first hub ended up being with a man. He had hoped to save this milestone for a breathtaking beauty, yet here he is, trapped in Jin Hui's iron grip. While Jin Hui glows in bliss, Xiao notices something oddly soft pressing against his head. The scene shifts to a memory of a young girl standing among a pile of dead animals as people call her a monster. Angrily, she glares back at them. Zhong Yun appears, offering her 2 rice cakes, and tells her that, like him, she's a human under the same sky. He kneels and asks if she would follow him. Back in the present, Jin Hui tells Xiao that the master wouldn't expel him just for lacking martial arts talent. Now that he's part of the sect, he's family and will always be their junior. Xiao pulls away from the hug, surprised to feel for the first time a hint of sympathy for Jin Hui. Despite his immense talent and mastery of martial arts, Jin Hui has the condition of gynecomastia, that faintly noticeable chest some men have. And so, Xiao believes that what he felt against his head earlier must have been Jin Hui's chest, specifically the result of his gynecomastia. Feeling pity for the poor guy, Xiao convinces himself there's no doubt Jin Hui is a man, as this was already confirmed back at the palace. Time passes, how much he's not sure, but the sect leader announces that they've completed their external body training. Xiaosu's muscles are well developed, and it's now time to begin internal arts training. Jinhui congratulates him enthusiastically, which embarrasses Xiaosu. He's fed up with how much Jinhui keeps involving herself in everything he does. The leader notices Xiaosu's discomfort and asks if something is wrong. Xiaosu brushes it off, saying it's nothing, while thinking that he has bigger problems than this person right now. Thanking the leader, he requests not to reduce his external training regimen. The master seems displeased by this, and Xiaosu knows he's right. Typically, beginners only need to train their external bodies to maintain basic physical condition, with the rest of their time dedicated to learning internal techniques or weapons training. But Xiaosu has a different goal: to build the perfect body that will captivate women. After all, he has to compete with Junhui, who is much more attractive than him. The leader asks why he's so adamant about continuing external training. Xiaosu explains that despite appearing talented, he actually develops slowly. He wants to contribute more than anyone else to rebuilding the sect and believes that additional effort will help achieve that. He acknowledges that continuing such training isn't the most efficient path, but it's not impossible. Moreover, if two fighters use the same sword strike, the one with greater strength will win. This slight advantage, he believes, will not only secure his victories but also help him eventually attract an extraordinary woman who will fall for his strength. Smiling, he pleads with the master to allow it, confident that he can push himself to the limit. The leader is impressed by the determination in Xiaosu's eyes. Here is someone who recognizes his ordinary talent yet strives to exceed it through sheer effort. Reflecting on the essence of the sect to help individuals reach their maximum potential, the leader considers that certain traditions were abandoned as the sect deteriorated. Perhaps Xiaosu's resolve is precisely what's needed to restore what was lost. Handing him a scroll, the leader says it contains the foundational formula for the young symbiote martial art. Xiaosu, confused, asks if this means he has permission to continue external training. The leader explains that the martial world is cruel to those without talent, but for those willing to face challenges, all paths open. Thus, Xiaosu is permitted to continue his external training but must also master the internal technique detailed in the scroll. Grinning, Xiaosu thanks him. The leader then begins infusing energy into Xiaosu's body, instructing him to guide it along the paths described in the scroll. As the warm, gentle energy flows through him, Xiaosu realizes it's completely different from the cold, sharp energy of the eunuch techniques he mastered in his past life. This is yang kai, vital and rejuvenating. The leader, Zhang Yang, praises him for reaching the realm of internal energy. Xiaosu pats his chest proudly, knowing he's no longer a eunuch. From this moment on, he truly feels reborn as a master. Jinhui smiles joyfully, witnessing his progress. Later that night, Jinhui tells the leader she wants to train externally alongside Xiaosu. She explains that, as a senior, she wants to lead by example, just as their leader does. The master, impressed by her sense of camaraderie, permits it, saying that even in the worst-case scenario, it will be a valuable learning experience. Looking out the window, the master feels hopeful, seeing these two young disciples earnestly working to rebuild the sect. Perhaps he thinks the long-held dreams of the previous master might finally come true. The next day, Xiaosu practices his punches, his face flushes as he begins to sense the new yang energy. Still, something about it feels strange and unfamiliar, likely because he had grown accustomed to the eunuch techniques in his past life. Reflecting on this, he recalls the sect emblem the leader showed him, the reverse Teiji symbol. This emblem represents the ancestral techniques of mastering the inverse yin-yang. Xiaosu resolves to adapt fully to this new energy, believing it is key to achieving both his physical and martial ideals. Mastering the technique of inverse yin-yang allows one to harbor two opposing energies within their body, achieving the peak of life force. This is why other sects often labeled them as practitioners of demonic arts. Using two such forces was unnatural. However, unlike demonic sects, they used their martial arts to eliminate demonic threats. Xiaosu reminds himself to stay mindful of this distinction and not be deceived by rumors. His overjoyed have joined the sect. Eliminating demonic martial sects would surely earn him respect worldwide. Suddenly, a knock comes at the door. A small boy stands there, pleading for help for his grandfather. Tears stream down his face as he implores them, saying if this truly were the most righteous sect in Gansu, they'd surely have someone who could help the man who supported them his whole life. Shenhui asks what's going on and Xiaosu explains that someone's asking for help. The problem is their master isn't around today, leaving them uncertain about what to do. Shortly after, they step outside and the boy explains he needs help finding whoever stole all of his grandfather's goats. Xiaosu remarks that such a theft should be reported to the local authorities. The boy insists it wasn't a person who did it. Judging by the tracks and destruction, it must have been something else. He explains that his grandfather always loved this sect and was raising the goats to sell and donate the proceeds. But when he went to fetch them for market, they were gone. Apologizing for being unable to pay, the boy begs them to help his grandfather, who supported the sect his whole life. Shou, after some thought, agrees to check it out, reasoning that the boy's effort to come all the way up the mountain deserves at least a look. Later, the boy leads them to the scene and Shou, noted the location at the base of D.And mountain, suspects it might have been a wild animal. His attention is drawn to some marks on the ground that look like snake tracks. However, the size suggests it's a demonic creature. He asked Jinhui if there's any legend about a giant snake on D.And mountain. She says she's never heard of such a thing. If it existed, the master would have dealt with it. Shou knows that the energy accumulating in the D.And mountains could trigger mutations in animals, but something this large would have been noticed before, meaning it appeared recently. He also sees this as the perfect chance to absorb a lot of vital energy. Shou tells Jinhui he'll handle it. Jinhui hesitates, saying it's dangerous to act without informing the master. Shou brushes this off, claiming that causing unnecessary alarm would be unwise and helping the mountain's residents is a virtuous act. Ignoring the boy's plea could fuel the rumors that their sect is demonic. Jinhui admits this makes sense, and the boy smiles, hopeful they'll eliminate the creature. Shou instructs Jinhui to escort the child back home while they follow the snake's trail. Later, as they run through the mountains, Shou finds the continuation of the trail. Jumping from branch to branch, Jinhui again questions whether acting without the master's knowledge is wise. Shou assures her that helping villagers is harmless, though his real motive is to accumulate vital energy. They pause on a branch as he advises caution, but suddenly, the trail vanishes. Jinhui warns him to be careful, and when he looks up, the massive snake lunges at him. It strikes him square in the chest, sending him crashing to the ground. Jinhui screams as Shou struggles to rise, bloodied and bruised. The narration interjects with a prophecy about a saint from another sect who got lost in D.And mountain and discovered a legendary item, secret techniques abandoned by D.And's ancestors, and an elixir. For an ordinary beast to become a demonic creature, it must absorb immense spiritual energy. The mutation likely occurred because residual energy in a cultivation spot affected the snake. Gripping his wounds, Shou realizes that if he survives, he'll not only restore his vitality, but also grow stronger and recover D.And's lost techniques. Jinhui rushes to his side, screaming for her junior as the snake prepares to strike again. She attacks, but her sword is ineffective against its tough scales. As she novices something on the side, the snake's tail slams her, sending her flying. Shou mentally berates her inexperience, thinking she panicked in a critical moment. Grabbing a branch, he lunges at the snake, stabbing it in the eye and forcing it to retreat momentarily. However, the venom begins to take its toll and Shou feels weaker. Jinhui asks if he's okay, but he insists they must focus. They've fallen into the creature's trap. He asks if she noticed the hardness of its scales, and Jinhui admits they're impenetrable. It must decapitate the snake in a single attack, but it's too fast to allow that. Shou notes that Jinhui still has far to go before reaching her full strength. The real problem is that, though he retains his past life skills, he's already been poisoned and can only buy them a little time. If Jinhui, with her inexperience, also gets poisoned, they're doomed. It resolves to create an opening. Removing his belt, he tells her to prepare for his signal. When it comes, she must use all her destructive yang energy in one decisive attack. Jinhui hesitantly asks how he plans to do anything in his condition. He will charges toward the snake, ailing that there's no time for hesitation. No matter how formidable a demon may be, they all have a weakness. He shouts as he dodges the snake's strike. Using his belt, he loops it around the snake's neck and slides underneath it. He signals Jinhui, who leaps with her sword, delivering a precise slash that cleaves the creature in two. The snake's body crashes to the ground, and Jinhui remarks that, as expected, the neck was its weak point. Still, she's shocked that Shou seemed to know this and guided her to decapitate the snake. Her attention shifts to the side, where Shou collapses to the ground. His body is burning from within, the venom's effects as described in legends. Jinhui grabs him as he struggles, thinking it's not so bad. He plans to use his superior energy control to absorb and expel part of the venom. Looking at Jinhui, he feels confident he'll be fine soon. But Jinhui, panicking, shakes him and pleads for him to wake up. Blaming her own weakness for relying on him to create an opening, she hugs him, having to save him somehow. Placing him on the ground, she declares that she's not ready to lose him like this. Without hesitation, she leans down and uses her mouth to suck the venom from his neck. Shou jolts awake, confused and disoriented, feeling something soft against his neck. Realizing what's happening, he flails and yells, asking what Jin Hui is doing. Jin Hui sits up, spitting out the venom equally flustered. Xiao Su fumes, calling her reckless while she blushes, insisting it's fine. She'll make sure he's safe. Later by the fire, Xiao Su sits despondently. Jin Hui, cheerful, comments that his pulse has stabilized, though she finds it odd that he suggested eating the demonic snake's meat. Xiao Su explains that some snake species have incredibly nutritious meat, to which Jin Hui muses that the master might enjoy it too. Annoyed, Xiao Su can't believe she's thinking about their master in an omen like this. He says that once they've eaten, they should search the snake's cave. After wandering through the forest, they finally find the entrance at the mountain's summit. Jin Hui remarks on the strong spiritual energy emanating from the cave. Xiao Su is impressed by her sharp intuition, wondering if she used the same skill in her past life to find this place. Inside, Jin Hui marvels, saying she never imagined Gongdong had a place like this. She speculates that the energy might be tied to some lost manuscript. Xiao Su agrees it's possible. It could be a hidden cultivation spot of the ancestors or where a master achieved immortality. If so, the place should be brimming with elixirs. Jin Hui notices something in the corner, several pills. However, they seem devoid of energy, likely consumed by the snake. Deeper inside, they discover a temple. In front of it sits a table with several books. Jin Hui approaches and identifies them as sword techniques. Realizing the significance, they conclude these are the lost martial arts of Gongdong. Jin Hui is in awe, convinced this must have been where the ancient masters trained. Xiao Su, having anticipated this, remains calm. She exclaims they stumbled upon an incredible opportunity. Xiao Su notes there might be more hidden treasures and suggests they split up to search. As soon as he's out of sight, Xiao Su sprints deeper into the cave, determined to find the elixirs before Jin Hui. If he can secure them, he'll accelerate his progress and avoid living in her shadow. Eventually, he spots a floating pill. Drooling at the sight, he declares this will help him leave behind all past humiliations, bringing him one step closer to becoming the harem king.